A lot of people will say like, this person, like if I dated this person, they brought the worst out of me. But it's like, no, you already have that in you. So why do you think people think that things are outside of them versus things are actually inside of them and they just have to learn how to face their own shadow?
What you're talking about is basically what I called in the book the ripple effect of the ego. A lot of people look at the ego as an attitude thing. It's a confidence thing. You think too good of yourself. It's arrogance, blah, blah, blah. It's your ego talking. That's really not what ego is. Actually, ego, it can be both a positive in the sense that it can be a protective thing. It can also be a very destructive one. But the main concept of an ego is to protect and filter. Basically, think about water dripping down and think about a filter going over it. The water that comes out of it comes out different, right? Like through the filter, and then,
Sure.
But it's still water, right?
Yeah.
So basically, what the ego does is it goes around your soul, like let's call it the soul, and it basically protects it. So the way I look at ego is basically a fake self that is created for the sake of acceptance of survival in society. We talk about society a lot as kind of this thing that's like different, right? Mm-hmm. And we see the norms in society breaking down now. But when we think about what is society, I think that's where the ego comes in. Most people in society live in society through their ego,
so do you think
not through their self.
Do you think that people don't know that they're living through their ego? Like they're not conscious of it?
Because I think that's a really, really good question. Are people aware of their ego? I talk about in the Gator shows about 3 core evolutionary steps man takes. One is awareness. One is self-awareness. And the final stage is consciousness. So do I think people at the awareness stage understand the difference between their ego and their self? No.
Right.
Do I believe people that are self-aware have enough understanding of their ego versus their self?
I think they dip in and out.
They are starting to. They're starting to learn who they are versus who they've been pretending to be. That's the idea of self-awareness.
Right.
Because awareness is about understanding your environment, your mastery of circumstance, like the first circle. But self-awareness is about your understanding of where you stand in that environment, right? Like who are you and what changes you're causing based on your presence in that environment.
So are you saying that your shadow is your ego?
No, actually, this is the interesting part. So a lot of people look at shadow as a negative. Like we've been taught growing up, like through religious beliefs and kind of goodwill beliefs, I would say, of how to live a life, that our goal in this life and society, we've been brainwashed to think it's been about helping each other. Like we have to be good people, we have to help one another, we have to tap into our light, right? Like these are the basic consensus that we've been told. And that in itself is the biggest trap to society. Yeah. It's biggest ever, because the point of human life is not to get along and to be nice. That's why I feel like this is such a paradox for people that get stuck in this idea of society. Because, I'm the one that always says society has to be overcome, Mm-hmm. And this is one of the reasons I say it has to be overcome and not just rejected. Because if you actually look at the way the human psyche is basically established, it is not meant to be conforming. It is not meant to be kind of structured, adaptive, and everything. Which is why most people want to reject society, right? Yeah. They feel like they're in a prison. My argument is that by rejecting society, you're not going to overcome it and go past it and manipulate it and learn to live past it. Instead, you're going to spend your entire life in a battle to fighting it when you don't have to fight it to overcome. Right. So my angle is not to accept society, because I also agree that society is completely fucked. Like there's no part of me that says, well, you guys are wrong. Society is good. The law is good.
Well, I think society is the reason that fantasies exist. Like say somebody's shadow or their darkness they feel is a fantasy.
Right, but understand that a shadow, but a shadow. This is the problem with humanity, is that it scopes with this understanding of how society changes what we call our value system. So our value system when we're born, right? When we're a child and we're born, is basically to look at everything as good or bad. Like a child is told, that's bad, don't do this. This is good, don't do that. Like do this, do that, etc. Right? But as we grow, what happens is your system changes from good or bad to right and wrong. Like, what is the right and what is the wrong of the company you work for? Yeah. What is the right and the wrong of the society you work in, right? Like, also something like, like if you do something wrong, right, you're going to jail. Like meaning if you break the law, right? So the evolution of the mind from awareness to self-awareness is basically the change in the prison of the value system. Right. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. That happens at awareness and self-awareness. if we look at the three circles, right? First, second, and third, the third circle is the freedom, right? It's basically the escape from thinking you matter. So the removal of the ego, right? And when we're looking in the third circle, basically it's the birth of consciousness. And one of the things that happens when the mind evolves from awareness to consciousness, which is a huge step, one that probably 98% of the population will never undertake on any basis. It's this amazing thing happens. Your value system changes from wisdom to deceit. Is not like the other two. It is not based on a black and white model of imprisonment, which is basically like, here's the rules, you can and can't. Instead, it basically leads your belief system to changing into, are you deceiving yourself by making this choice? Versus, in this choice, are you going to gain wisdom out of the experience?
Right.
So the focus is there evolution or is there a halt to the evolution? Now, if we take that same model and spread it across the evolution and the growth of a human, then the question becomes, if the path of a human is to seek further wisdom and to evolve and take an evolutionary path, then nowhere in that path is there a doctrine for kindness or being sweet as the predetermining factor of that growth. So now what I'm saying here is not that you shouldn't be nice, like you should be evil or you should tap into your shadow. What I'm saying is if the idea is that evolution is the key, then the question is, kindness is not the primary driver of that change. You know, like society, when they're saying be kind, be nice, help one another, it's basically saying be docile. You know, be soft, be docile, you know, care, right? Versus what I'm saying is that man has always lived dangerously. And I think that this is what he has forgotten to do. Like many people are afraid of risk, right? These are very calculated risks that are small. They're still afraid to take them.
Right.
Imagine the old days when fear was really like you had to go fight a mammoth, you know, or something to bring food home. Like these extraordinary levels of self-danger, right, are not even existing today in very small doses. Like people are courageous within the scope of their job, as long as it doesn't make them lose it, you know? They're like, if they stand up for someone, it's only because they can to a degree. So then comes the lack of wisdom, right? And the fulfillment for deceit. So the way I look at shadow and light, when someone says they have an internal shadow, I don't look at it as it's negative, like it's bad. You need to get rid of your shadow.
I don't think it is either.
Instead, I look at it as...
I don't think you can get rid of your shadow.
Well, you can. That's what I'm saying. And one of the really good models that if you actually follow some of the key philosophers like Nietzsche from back in the day, he used to say the higher man lifts himself into the heavens, right, the further his roots go into hell. So it goes almost the same as a tree. The bigger the tree, the deeper rooted it is into the ground, right? So he was saying one has to realize that the higher the human, the more rooted into hell his depth. You know, like, so now here's the thing. It's not that he is evil rooted, his capacity for evil.
Right.
Almost like saying the more powerful you are, the more bad you can choose to be, right? Like, because think about like if you're depressed and you choose to use it for the wrong term, then you could make a lot of damage, right? So the higher up you go, the more capacity for down you have, right? And that also means that the greater your capacity for choice comes, where it does matter significantly more than the average person.
Right. I see. So do you think that when somebody does react to a situation in a certain way, and they say, this isn't me, this isn't normally, like, you know what I'm talking about? When someone's like, if you piss someone off,
this wasn't really what I, you know, I'm sorry.
This isn't who I am, and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, I think that's when character truly shows. And that's when you can really, that's when somebody's true self reveals itself.
You see, I don't think it's the true self, actually. I think it's the hidden self. And the hidden self is not necessarily a true self. Like, someone could be very angry inside and hide it through their ego. Their ego actually helps them gain acceptance because they're social, they're sweet, they're nice. But deep inside, they hate people. They're very dark. You know, like they.
But I think you need to. I think you need to.
But what I'm saying is,
instead of people saying,
but what I'm saying is, if that person comes out and does that, like, and you know, it gets to that level, it doesn't mean that's who they are. It's basically who they've concealed behind their ego, and that ego is shattered by what has happened. You know, for that moment. So it allowed the energy to spill out and be like, I'm doing what basically I was always going to do.
But I think it's wrong to say that it's not me. Like, it's wrong to have the belief that that's not you because it only comes from within you.
So when you say, again, if you say it's right and wrong, we're looking at it from a societal sense. If you say it's deceiving to yourself, it's deceiving because that isn't who you are. It's basically who you never faced.
Right.
Therefore, it's now impacting others around you. because of your inability to shelter.
But it's still a part of you.
But this is the thing. When you say it's a part of you, there's two sides to that. It's either a part of you in the sense that it's what has built into you, into your belief system, or it's part of who you are in your character. Now, it's not automatically one or the other. Like if someone is hateful of, let's say, a certain race or a breed, someone says, I don't like black people. If that is something someone feels inside, like they weren't born that way, right? So they were born basically with a thought, and through the years, that belief system made them, like the ego basically told them, you can't be racist in public. You know, like it's basically frowned upon, it's looked at. You'll never be accepted, right? Into peer groups, you'll never have friends, you'll never do anything. So the person goes, oh, I got to hide that inside, right? I got to not let that out. So the ego basically takes over and goes, yeah, we're just not going to show that to people. What occurs, though, that's so important that a lot of people miss through that, is that just because that's internally hidden does not mean automatically that I'm a bad person in that realm. I have been raised with a poor value system, and I have hid from facing it. You know, I'm hid from questioning it, facing it. Maybe my parents were very racist, and what I'm saying is, if I've held that deep within, then I have made a significant mistake, right? Because I have never faced who I truly was. So is it fair to say that I was like a bad person inside? Not necessarily, because maybe I just never dealt with what I was taught.